Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Suit Up Geek Fix channel now. Welcome so much, guys. And we are here talking about and ranking all 23 MCU movies. We're excluding WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We're only talking about the films. And I guess we can say in anticipation for Loki, even though it's a show. But let's just get right into it. We're going to go from satisfactory all the way down to F. Deebs, lead us off. Which one do you think deserves that satisfactory level of grace?
So this is the highest tier you can get. And, I know where you're going to go, and I'm going to save it for you because that's your baby. But when we talk about babies of the MCU, this is my baby, and that is the Winter Soldier. Captain America, the Winter Soldier here. I'm going to move it up top. That's not it. But this really just combined everything I love about the MCU. It's got great action. It's got, a great story. It's got great emotion. The film score in itself is absolutely terrific. And it really was the debut of the Russo brothers, which hands down was the biggest game changer in the MCU period. The Winter Soldier is that political spy thriller. The action choreography of Bucky versus Steve is top notch. Everything about this movie just changed the game for the MCU at a point where the MCU kind of was getting a little stale. This was the first movie that showed you, whoa, look at the potential of this in terms of like going into different genres and all that kind of stuff. I give this my highest grade for the MCU.
No, yeah, honestly, Deebs, you hit it nail on the head. I think you enjoyed a little bit more than me because I have my ranking in front of me and I have the Winter Soldier at a 7, which honestly, I think a few months ago I had it like 12 or 11. I rewatched it recently and went all the way back up, and it's definitely an S tier movie. This movie kind of pushed away from the superhero genre and showed that superhero movies can be more than just beat 'em ups with a lot of special effects on the screen, and they can kind of bring it down to a more condensed real world type situation. And I think that's why a lot of people specifically attract more to the Captain America trilogy as a whole. So I definitely got to agree with you. That is definitely an S tier film. And Deebs, you knew exactly what I was going to choose. You knew exactly what I was going to choose. Yeah, Thank you so much, Wesley. Right Appreciate it, man. We're always posting on here, man. We're going to be posting like random streams and videos like this, but we also have a set schedule. We'll read that out at the end of the tier list. It's awesome. But another S tier film is got to be Avengers Infinity War, man. You knew it was coming. Avengers Infinity War is my #1 Marvel project in history. I think I gave this movie a perfect score. I rewatch it all the time, and I still feel like I'm rewatching it for the very first time. This is also directed by the Warner Brothers, not the Warner Brothers, the Russo brothers. The Russo brothers. And I think this is another massively influential film in the superhero genre. This movie shows that we can have 64 main characters on a screen at once and still have a coherent story and still have a very sympathetic and going back and forth, whether you see where he's coming from and also not agreeing with him because he's obviously the villain. And Thanos is easily one of my favorite villains in cinema history. I think they added a lot of nuance to him, and they really made Infinity War his background and origin story. Dude, I love this movie. What do you think about this movie, Deebs?
Of course, I don't even know what else to say. It is 100% a top tier MCU flick. It is everything and then more, like everything in terms of hype. And then when you have this massive amount of hype and it delivers, it just instantly makes it an all-time classic. Thanos, the sympathetic villain, is another reason why I'm going with my next S tier for me, and that is Black Panther for me. For me, I'm putting S tier for Black Panther. I'm talking about Killmonger. When you talk about how impactful Falcon and the Winter Soldier was, this is where it started. This is absolutely where it started in terms of just social change, race, all of that stuff. I think WandaVision even showed it as well. I think the MCU thrives when it's tackling real adult themes, like in WandaVision, loss and grief and isolation. Here, the same kind of thing but just tackling more like race and those kind of societal norms. And power. What does it mean to have all this power along with that? So, Black Panther for me, I'm a DC guy through and through. Killmonger was a game changer for me. I absolutely loved Killmonger as a villain. So I always weigh villains pretty highly when I rank these kind of movies. How would you grade Black Panther, man?
So looking at my tier list, I have Black Panther at 13. I have it pretty down. And I wouldn't say pretty down there out of 23 films. It's a good middle film for me. I absolutely agree with you on Killmonger. Killmonger is one of the best villains we have in the MCU. And it was really unfortunate that they killed him at the end. But that said, I felt like they kind of rushed with the Ulysses Claw plotline that they started to build up in Avengers Age of Ultron. And they got Andy Serkis, and I really felt like his character stood out for that first 2/3 of the film until Killmonger just randomly just shot him because he wasn't useful to him anymore. And I would have liked to see a little bit more Ulysses Claw. I feel like these type of movies that have 2 or 3 villains, I wouldn't say a third villain, but more of with the FBI kind of meddling with the Wakandans. So we have like the 3 antagonists. We've got the FBI, we've got Claw, and we've got Golden Panther. I think his like suit name is, right? It's like Golden Panther or something.
I forget.
Yeah. And I really liked what they were building off of after Civil War of T'Challa having to take the reins from his father and not really knowing if he's worthy of it. And he's kind of mad that his dad's dead. But at the end of the day, I don't think the CGI was that great. I did a little digging on this movie like a few months ago. And this movie was really rushed when it came to visual effects to meet that February dateline that they had. They had originally, I think it was 12 weeks to work visual effects, but then Marvel, because they were pushing out in February, only gave them 6 or 7 weeks. So they cut the visual effects time in half for them. And I just think it made for a very jarring third act that really brought the film down for me after a pretty good first act and then really building off that first act in the second act. And with Daniel Kaluuya's character, I really feel like they didn't know what to do with him just yet in that film. I don't know if they're going to put him in Black Panther Wakanda Forever or anything, but I'm interested to see where they go. But I would give it a B in my overall ranking.
All right, let's move it to an A.
Yeah.
I think the one shame about Black Panther, and it's just real sad, is we never got to see the true impact that Killmonger had on T'Challa. And that's really what I was looking forward to in Black Panther 2. And
I think we'll get that in not only Black Panther 2, but the Wakanda show too. I feel like they're really going to go in on the legacy of T'Challa and and they're really going to explore what he did in between the films that we didn't see. You know what I mean? Kind of just throw that in there is what I feel like. But let me get my list up because my top 8 I would consider like S tier films, but you know what? I'm gonna go from my New York City heart. I'm gonna go Spider-Man Homecoming for my S tier. Yeah, I absolutely love Spider-Man. Spider-Man is one of my favorite, not MCU characters, but superhero characters in general. This is my Batman for people if they want to understand. I absolutely love the idea of Peter Parker kind of being this not so rich, not so popular, but super smart teenager who doesn't let the troubles of being a teenager get him down at the end of the day. They get to him, but he ultimately prevails because of his power and his willingness and push to move forward as a superhero and ultimately help that little man because he feels like the little man and he doesn't like people feeling like that. And I think when I first heard that they were going to put the Vulture in this, I was kind of nervous because I was never a huge fan of the Vulture, but I think Michael Keaton really brought something to the role and made him a lot more sympathetic than I was afraid they were not going to make him because he's kind of just an old cranky dude in the comics. And I'm really glad that they added the nuance between him and Liz being his daughter, and then Spider-Man and actually him connecting at the end of the film. And I don't know about you, but the whole scene of the Vulture threatening Peter in the back of the car with the gun is just awesome. It's one of my favorite, like, super villainous, I'm gonna fucking kill you type of scenes.
Mm-hmm. No, I would probably give it a B. It's actually not my favorite Spider-Man film in the MCU. And Michael Giacchino, he's a god, but it's actually not my favorite score in the MCU either, which we'll get to in a little bit. I'd probably give this a B. You nailed it. I think the best moments of Spider-Man is Michael Keaton's Vulture. You said that scene with him in the car just raised the stakes immensely. It's a good film. It just didn't have the weight of some of these other ones for me. Like that scene of Peter like lifting the building, that was awesome. That was like Peter Parker to a T. That was excellent. But there was a lot of like other moments in another Spider-Man film that I actually enjoyed it a little more. Should we move it to an A?
Yeah, that works for me. A is perfectly plausible for a Spidey movie.
All right, I'm gonna go with another S tier, and that is if I can find it. I did this that long ago. I should be able to find these things. Wow, there it is. Jeez, Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy is an S tier for me. What more is there to be said? James Gunn. James Gunn understands character development. This was a movie, coming into it, I had no idea who the Guardians of the Galaxy were. I had no idea how the MCU was going to make this actually interesting. And I remember walking out of it being like, I love every single one of these characters. Guardians of the Galaxy, you can't talk about it without bringing up the soundtrack, which is still, to this day, one of the best ever. As a film score guy, that's important to me. I Am Groot, Chris Pratt as that Han Solo type of hero, and then you have, or anti, I don't know what you want to call it, but what I love about this movie is the immense heart it had. It had so much heart. It had so much war. That scene at the end of I Am Groot, that the ending was a little anticlimactic with the dance off and all that kind of stuff. It is what it is. But this was the film that showed you like Marvel can go for it, and if you have the right directors and you have the right acting and the right editing and script, you can do it. And you talk about WandaVision and how amazing it was. We're going to be talking about that tonight, by the way. How like experimental it was. That started with Guardians and how like it got weird. And they went for it and they nailed it. Guardians of the Galaxy for me and S. What about you?
No, honestly, I agree. This is my top three. This is my third overall in the MCU. And Deebs, I don't know if you've noticed this so far. So the S films that we have are big, monumental, and kind of influences on the MCU today. Captain America allowed us to go into the real world grittiness. Avengers allowed us to open up to more than just a few movies of heroes. Instead, we saw the entire MCU at that point in one film. So that proved that we can do those things. And Guardians of the Galaxy proved that we can go to space. We can leave Earth. We can go kind of crazy and wacky with all these really cool and beautiful planets with all these weird, wacky aliens that look humanoid, that don't look humanoid. And I think they got the casting perfect for this movie. Dave Bautista's Drax is one of the funniest characters in the MCU. Zoe Saldana as Gamora is great. Chris Pratt as Star-Lord is fantastic. Vin Diesel, I'm not the biggest fan of him as an actor, but him saying I am Groot over and over again has got to be one of his best acting roles to date. And who am I forgetting? Oh, Bradley Cooper as Rocket Raccoon. These are a bunch of these super funny and genuine characters. We're put in this larger than life story, but with these relatable problems. Someone who was abducted as a kid after his mother died. That's a very real world problem. Gamora not living or not wanting to do what her father is creating her to do. That's as basic as I can make it, but you kind of see where I'm going at. This film kind of pushed sound waves into moving the MCU, and you hit it right on the head. This is an S tier film. Damn, dude. You know what? I know a few people will be mad at me about this. I know you'll like this one, Deebs. Another
Yeah.
S tier film, Thor Ragnarok, dude.
Yes, 100%.
Absolutely love this film. This Taika Waititi brought fresh and life and rejuvenation to this character. It was a massively insane just how much of a flip flop this was from the other two films, and even Thor in the other two Avengers movies at this point. This is such a far departure from the Thor that we knew in the MCU up until this point. He was always kind of a sad, dragging, dark character. Even in his films, nothing was too bright. Everything was kind of gray and dark to kind of express how his character is. But in this film, we still get that, but now he's kind of got the laughing off factor. He makes everything into a joke because he's lost so much. He builds everything into a joke, and that's how he deals with it. That goes a little bit more into in Avengers End Game, we'll get to later. But I really think Taika Waititi brought not only a new vision to this character and the MCU, but I think he also brought this new color palette. I think this is, bro, if this is any indication where he's going with Thor Love and Thunder, I can't wait to see what type of extravaganza type things he's going to be putting in this film, because it is a gorgeous cinematic jewel.
Ian, we have not ranked these movies, so we're on S tier still. So we're moving down from S to A to B. So everything you see below A, we haven't touched yet. Just an FYI there.
No, yeah.
I fully agree. Thor Ragnarok is 100% an S tier. I love how this was like the sci-fi of the MCU, and there's just something like so joyous and fun about this. Like when as a DC guy, I think he says, okay, you got me worried. We're going to get there, man. We're going to get there. I promise. Very soon, probably. Thor Ragnarok, what's so good about it is like, as a DC fan, I would love to see kind of Superman treated in almost a similar fashion. Like what I mean by that is it's so much fun. They were able to kind of strip Thor down, literally. Like they took away his hammer. They took away his homeworld. They threw him. They drug him through hell and back. They put him on a brand new planet. Like that's what I love about this film, and they did it right, top to bottom. The score is fantastic. It's just a lot of fun. Jeff Goldblum crushes it. Talking about villains, Cate Blanchett as Hela was absolutely terrific, and I love that like layer they added with her being in the family and what Thor didn't know about the family. Like there's a lot of really interesting parts there. Thor Ragnarok is 100% an S tier. This was like part of when MCU could do no wrong. I feel like when it came out, it's like it is just so well done. So I agree, S tier.
And watching Hulk just jump into Surtur is just always super fun, because why not?
Oh, it's so good, man. So good. Any other S tiers on this list? I'm looking at.
I can think of at least 3 more S tiers.
We might run out of room, man.
Dude, I know. I got at least 3 more S tiers.
All right, I'm going to throw an S tier on here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I got to put Endgame on this too.
Okay, good. That was one of mine too.
We'll get, crapped on if we didn't have Endgame there for an S tier. I think Infinity War is better than Endgame, but I think in terms of like pound for pound emotionful moments, Avengers Endgame has better moments, if that makes sense. And what the Russo brothers did with this film is crazy when you think you have how many films over a decade of weaving storylines and plot lines, and to really wrap a bow on it and like make it that effective for our 2 main leads in Steve and Tony. I think so many props need to go to the Russo brothers for doing what they did and doing what they accomplished, because that's no easy feat to be able to like have this massive franchise and project and to make it that good and that satisfying of a conclusion. Like you don't see that anymore. That's a really hard thing to find. Like I said with the Winter Soldier, the Russo brothers were the single biggest game changer for the MCU, and I hope they return. But if this is their swan song here in the MCU, I'm good with it. What about you, man?
Honestly, aside from how good the movie is in general, I think this movie just had everything going against it coming out. It had great marketing, sure, and all that. But when you think about it, the Russo brothers had to close out 6 different stories for people that span 10 years at that point, from 2008 to 2019. And at the end, they had to set up all these different little things, like Sam going into the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Wanda and Vision going into WandaVision, Loki going into Loki. Like, you see how they had to trickle everything. And yeah, Kevin Feige owns a huge feat to this as well. But man, did they hit on everything in this. They went back to some of the first moments with Captain America almost picking up Mjolnir. And he did it in this film, and him finally saying Avengers Assemble after being teased God knows how many times. Dude, this movie just brings so many great memories. I mean, seeing the whole third act in theater was something that you can't reenact for me. I don't think I'll ever get that feeling again. The same thing goes for Avengers Infinity War, when all the Avengers and everyone got snapped at the end. Both these films just left me with a jaw drop. Avengers Endgame, bro, I'll be honest, this is one of 2 movies that make me cry. The ending of watching Tony close out his arc so beautifully and poignantly, it was his swan song. Like you said before, if this is the Russo swan song, this is Cap's and Iron Man's swan song. And this movie could have easily gone wrong really fast in so many different areas, but I think they hit it with every single moment, and this movie deserves to be an S tier.
Yeah. That scene of Avengers Assemble will always go down as one of my greatest cinematic experiences of all time. Like, I went into it in the dark. I remember, like, I wasn't on Twitter or social media for like over 2 weeks. Like, I was like, nothing's gonna get ruined for this. And the fact that I saw it and it happened naturally, I just remember just having the most hype moment of my life followed by the most tragic moment of my life.
Yeah.
And it was just, I remember walking out of that theater just so satisfied, which is such an accomplishment.
I want to touch on what Ian said real quick. I agree. Overall, the movie is an A tier, but I think the movie gets enough credit towards the amount of effort and what it had to do that kind of nudges it up to that S tier for me, between the moments and wrapping up 10 years of storyline for characters that you didn't even create and didn't even start off with. I think is just a master achievement alone that I think it does deserve to be pushed up to that S tier. 100%. And I'm gonna close out our S tiers here. I'm gonna put Spider-Man Far From Home at least. I love this film. This and Homecoming go back and forth for me. This is my fourth. They're both my 4th and 5th. So whenever I watch them, I'll switch them between 4 and 5. I think this is another great Spider-Man film, which is a kind of ironic for a character that's built off of New York City. To see him traveling around different countries and continents was something that I was nervous about at first, but I think John Watts really brought something unique to not only Peter's journey. Oh my God, dude, this drink is killing me right now. Between Peter's journey and him living up to the Iron Man persona and his legacy, I think just speaks throughout this film. I know a lot of people gave this movie shit about Marvel trying to fool us that Mysterio was a good guy, but I feel like they were kind of leaning into who Mysterio is. They know exactly who he is, but that's the whole thing. They want you to believe him. And honestly, I think Jake Gyllenhaal played it off so perfectly that even in the first act, up until when he gets the glasses and reveals his true tendencies, I sort of wanted to believe that he was a good guy. Seeing what Peter has gone through from Civil War to now, him getting that friend, you just wanted to wish that upon him, let alone whether it was true or not. And as I wasn't the biggest fan of the third act after watching it in theaters, but as I keep rewatching it, just Peter and Spider-Man's web motion alone just makes it such an eye pleaser. Just watching him go from A to B, sometimes his webs don't work, which I think they need to implement more in to use his ingenuity. And I think he uses that perfectly between the Thor hammer he builds, the Captain America shield off the plaque he builds. Like, he's not just a man that can shoot webs or a kid that can shoot webs. I like how they show that he's also a smart kid that can use whatever's around him in the nick of a dime without his powers.
Yeah, I'm like right in the middle of that A to S tier for Far From Home. I thought it was the better Spider-Man film. I thought it was like that European vacation type of MCU film where it was a ton of fun. I love, all the characters in this. I love how they pushed Peter's character forward with MJ and what that means moving forward. I love it. I actually loved Mysterio. I thought, the way he was presented in this was just terrific, led by Jake Gyllenhaal. I think pound for pound, this is a great film. I'm excited to see where Spider-Man goes. And I'm not sure because I'm actually a little worried because there's so much going on for Spider-Man No Way Home that I don't even know how much this movie is going to impact that, because Spider-Man is going to be such a huge needle mover for the MCU moving forward. So we'll see. We will see. But I don't know what else to say. You nailed it, man. Like Spider-Man Far From Home, that illusion scene from Mysterio, like it's just a lot of fun. Like it's just really well done film. And we got the Peter Tingles really represented.
It's got one of the best end credit scenes too, I gotta say.
Yeah.
One of the most jaw-dropping, like, what? This is the first time I actually, what the fuck? At the end of the movie, I was watching my grandmother, and J. Jonah Jameson just shows up with a clip out of nowhere of Peter's identity, and you're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's great. Do we have any other S tiers?
I don't, unless you do. I definitely have a few A's.
I definitely have a few A's too, but the one A I'm contemplating between S tier and A tier. I'll lead us off. All right, is that cool?
Go ahead.
I'm gonna go with an A, and that is Iron Man. Iron Man going to A tier. There it is. I mean, it's like the Toy Story of the MCU. Like, even though it's not the best film, it's something that it just speaks to vision and planning and storyboarding and so much in place with Iron Man. It needs to have its role here in the upper echelon of the MCU. Ian says Endgame is A. Oh, never mind. I thought I read that Iron Man for some reason. Anyway, Iron Man, I mean, Tony Stark, his arc was terrific. Not as good as Steve Rogers, by the way. But Iron Man deserved a spot here. AC/DC all the way. What about you?
I think it's really weird when talking about this film because we're trying to judge it as a Marvel film, but then you also look at it as the first Marvel film in the MCU. So it's really hard to look at where we are now and try to compare it to where we are in 2008, because I feel like as a solo film, this movie is good. I definitely think it suffers from some of the regular superhero tropes of the villain being the exact same as our hero. And Marvel does get a little bit of slack for that, I feel. And I definitely think it shows in this film. They've definitely gotten better with it in the latter half, as we've seen, with more-versatile and different villains. But I didn't really think Ironmonger was that great of a villain. I think Jeff Bridges did good with what he was given, but he was relatively just an older Tony Stark if he never went on this giant 10-year journey of him dying at the end with Thanos. If none of that happened, I feel like Ironmonger would have just been Tony Stark just becoming the villain, which is what you want to say. But I also got to judge it as the first film, and you can't really fault them for going down that road. So that's why I feel like I have a hard time talking about this film. Ultimately, I graded it a 16 on my list. I would give it a B. I think the suit looks great for 2008 visual effects. It still holds up to this day, I think. It introduced us to Robert Downey Jr. And I'm not the biggest Gwyneth Paltrow fan in general, so she didn't really do much for me, and that goes for all three of the other Iron Man films. but I'm gonna say this movie is a solid B for me.
I need to say, all right, so we're gonna let's move it to a B, just for the sake of argument.
Yep.
I just want to say that it's important to say, look at the 2007 movies, superhero movies, man. Ghost Rider, Spider-Man 3, Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer. You go to like 2008, you had Hancock was actually somewhat enjoyable. The Spirit, Punisher, Warzone. So there's a lot of movies there that there was just a lot of swing and misses, if you know what I mean.
No, yeah.
And this was a movie that that end credit with Nick Fury was just opening the door to so many more possibilities.
And I think you also have to see it is Kevin Feige was working on Marvel films way before the MCU. So all the ones you just named, he had a foot in it. He helped with where the direction went. So I think he took a lot of that information and really wanted to take a step back and tell a more grounded solo story. And it obviously worked out for the better for them. It definitely worked out better. I'm gonna go with a little bit of a hot topic right now for A tier. I'm gonna say Ant-Man. I know I gave Iron Man a little bit slack for having the same villain as the hero, and I think that's my only downfall with Ant-Man is I don't think the villain is that great, but I think all the other elements just elevate this film. It also does something different. It's a heist film, first of all. This came out in 2014, and we hadn't seen that at that time with a man that turns into an ant. It's absolutely bizarre. And I think they took a risky choice in making Scott Lang the Ant-Man of the MCU, just because I don't even know what their choice was, honestly, but it worked out. I think Paul Rudd kills it as Ant-Man. I think the visual effects are perfect for this film. I think they really capture what it would be like to be that small between roaming around in broad daylight in the typical world or riding on the back of a bee or something. You know what I mean? And the puns for Anthony is great. Antony, however they pronounce it. Luis and his speeches are great. His stories are fantastic. My man Edgar Wright wrote portions of this. So that's also why I have a guilty pleasure for Edgar Wright films. He's one of my favorite filmmakers, man. And you can see between the editing and the writing where some of his kind of pizzazz came in. And I think it really added to this. I think Scott's relationship with his daughters really well that they build on in the future. Scott and not Janet. Oh my God, Hope is perfect in this film, and they build off that in Ant-Man and the Wasp and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania and Avengers End Game. I think everyone has a great connection and they all feed off each other, one another, where even though not a lot of actions going on, I feel like those character interactions are just as interesting, which is why I give the film a lot of credit.
I'm good with an A. I think
awesome, bro. Nice. That makes me happy.
Like I said, I love, action and mind-numbing fight scenes as much as the next person. Believe me, I do. But I love heart, and this movie just has oodles and oodles of heart, and I love it to death. It's funny. There's something like crazy charming about it. I don't know what it is. It's almost like Shazam level. Like it's just so.
It's Paul Rudd. It's Paul Rudd.
Yeah, maybe it's Paul Rudd. Maybe it's Paul Rudd.
I definitely think it's Paul Rudd.
It's just so fun, and it's just so light and heartwarming to see the father-daughter relationships, all that kind of stuff. I'm good with that. You're not going to see any issues from me.
Dude, no, that makes me happy because I feel like too many people shit on Ant-Man and give the sequel a lot more credit when I think, bro, this movie did it before the sequel. That's how I see it. I love Ant-Man. I just rewatched it recently. It's just such a good film, but hit us with another A, man.
I got to go the no-brainer here, if I can find it, and that is the Avengers. The Avengers have to be represented among the top here for what it did, man. Just like that, the ultimate team up superhero film. There's so many moments in this movie where, like Endgame, like Infinity War, this did it first. And it was just like, I remember just pumping my fist in the air watching this film when you had the camera panning around our heroes in the Battle of New York. This movie is just, who is it? Joss Whedon, right? I think.
Yeah.
Just absolutely terrific directing. Nailed the characters 100% top to bottom. So many of these characters had great moments, and I'll say this is an A tier just for the simple fact that look how far we are from there. Like Avengers seems like it was forever ago.
Bro, 9 years. 9 years.
That is crazy.
May 5th made 9 years. Can you believe that?
No, I cannot. So Avengers goes up on here. So many epic moments, like from Steve's redemption arc, saving the day. There's just so many epic moments. That scene where my personally favorite scene in this is during the Battle of New York, when Captain Rogers is talking to the cops and said, we need to put forces here, here, and here. And the cops are like, why would we listen to you? And then, was it the Shatori, I think, come up, and he cuts an arm off and then takes down 2 more. And then the cops look at it and go, we need to build a force block right here. That's just the best directing, period. Joss Whedon, The Avengers is an A tier for me.
No, yeah, I was going to say that as my next one too. I think this film did it first again. It proved that multiple characters from separate films in the same universe can come together and co-lead a film together. They all get their own screen time. I think Hawkeye did get a little back-ended at the end of the day, but this is also his real first film as a character, if you don't want to count Thor like I do. But yeah, dude, this movie has a lot of memorable moments, just like in the Battle of New York when Thor and the Hulk were on top of the Chitauri alien worm roaming around the city in the sky. Hulk was just going in, ripping him apart. Then we have Iron Man going through the stomach and cutting him from the inside out. It just shows us that we can have these giant action blockbuster films while telling a coherent story at the same time. And this movie envisions that. And yeah, dude, it's so weird going back to see this was the first one, and then we look at End Game. It's so vastly different, and it just shows you the ride we've been on. And this is the film that did it first, so I give this film a lot of credit, and it does deserve that A spot. No, do you have anything else to say on that before I go into the next A? No. I think
just puny God. That puny God moment.
Puny God, yeah, that was when he first talked, and he was like, bow, 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 bow. Puny God just spits on him. Absolute disrespect. Thank you, Hulk. This is going to be my last A tier film, is Captain America Civil War. I think a lot of people hate on this film a little too much. I don't know why. This is also another film that brought in one of the best MCU villains with the Baron Zemo. I think Zemo's a great villain. He's not only the only person to break up the Avengers, but he's also human. He didn't need powers to break up the most powerful people on the planet. I find that's so hard. Even Thanos couldn't do it. Then they eventually came back and went against him. That, I still find that crazy that a human was able to divide the heroes, because at the end of the day, if we think about it, if Civil War didn't happen, they probably would have beat Thanos in Infinity War. So Zemo does have a part to play in why the Avengers lost in the first or the third Avengers film. So I think that adds a lot of nuance to this film. I really liked how they did the Iron Man versus Captain America teams. It really not only pitted the people in the movie against each other, but it pitted the fans against each other in a nice, healthy argument before Twitter got so toxic. And just seeing the Team Iron Man and Team Captain going on before this was awesome. And dude, this movie introduced Spider-Man. My favorite comic book hero to date is finally in the MCU, and I think they nailed it with a great, memorable fight scene at the Germany airport, which was fantastic. We had a lot of hard moments, and this is really when the MCU started to feel like the MCU. This is the first film where I feel like a bunch of characters were kind of just in this film to help move the plot forward, and it felt like it was hard to do, but it helped tell us that this universe is more connected than us telling you we have 50 different main characters, but for some reason they never intersect into their own films. And I know a lot of people give this movie slack because it's just Avengers 2.5, where it really isn't. The reason why it's called Captain America Civil War is because Captain America and Bucky are the heart of this film at the end of the day. This wouldn't happen if Bucky didn't exist. This wouldn't happen if Captain didn't exist. They're the two driving forces for this. And it just so happens that the rest of Avengers had to be put in this dilemma. So while people complain that it's just Avengers 2.5, I see a lot of the Avengers as supporting characters rather than an average Avengers film where they're head center. You know what I mean?
Yep, I'm good. 100% A. Again, Russo brothers, the best. I thought the Spider-Man inclusion here was a little forced. It was a little forced for my liking, but I can't complain. I mean, it was a top-notch film. This felt like Avengers 2.5 or wherever we're at this point. It felt like another Avengers movie. And I want to like finish my A rankings here with a movie. If we're going to have Iron Man on this list, then there better be another one on this list. And we're talking the first Avenger. I'm going Captain America, the first Avenger as my A tier. Talk about a movie that I think has really aged well. This is a movie that I love to death. I could do this all day. It introduced us to this worn, torn Steve Rogers and where he has come from, who he is, not the soldier, but the man. We see his legacy impacted, throughout the entire Infinity Saga, throughout Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I love Captain America, the first Avenger, mostly because it also introduced us to Peggy Carter, who is the single biggest badass female character in the MCU. I love Captain America. He is my favorite hero in the MCU. So what about you, man? How would you rate First Avenger?
I'd give First Avenger a B in my books. I feel like it's a very phase one film where Marvel was trying to figure out their footing and stride. And I still think it's a really good movie. I think every Captain America film in the trilogy is a B or higher. I don't really I guess this is more of a gripe with the long-term effect of the end of this movie. I know what they're trying to do with the Red Skull in Infinity War and Endgame. I just think it was a little too long for us to just kind of get that, oh, he's there. Because I feel like by the time we got to Infinity War and Endgame, people didn't really recognize the character, especially that it was played by a different actor. I think Hugo Weaving did a good job, but he felt like a very tongue-in-cheek, mustache-twirling villain. I really liked the design of him, but because he was just that mustache-twirling villain, I didn't really feel like he was a threat at all, and I didn't really feel like Captain America would lose against him. But at the end of the day, I do enjoy this film. You can keep it A if you want. It doesn't really bother me. I like B or A. It works, both of them. I don't really have too many complaints other than the villain. I think they gave us another perfect casting with Chris Evans as Steve Rogers.
Yeah.
Peggy Carter was fantastic. Even Tommy Lee Jones as the Army general was great too. So we can leave it at A. That's perfectly fine.
I want to bring up when Robert Downey Jr. was cast as Iron Man, everyone's like, hell yeah, like that was awesome. That wasn't the case with Chris Evans. That was like the exact opposite. And like looking back at that, man, can you imagine anyone else as Captain America, Chris Evans? Like, can you?
Yeah, Anthony Mackie, gang love.
Nice. I see what you did there.
Nah, dude, I definitely think Chris Evans was the best choice for leading Captain America into the MCU. Definitely. I don't have any more A's. Do you have any more A's before we move on to the B's?
No, I'm comfortable putting them at B.
Okay, cool. So let's go with, you know what? I'm gonna go with Doctor Strange in B category.
Yeah, there we go.
I recently just rewatched this a few weeks ago too. This movie, man, Scott Derrickson really made a unique Marvel film. This is also another Marvel film that showed us we can go past different comfort levels into a multiverse that we're gonna see in the multiverse of madness soon. Don't worry, peeps, less than a year at this point. But man, is this movie just a visual delight? The villain just doesn't even exist in this film when it comes to when I think about it. For me, this is strictly a Stephen Strange film, Doctor Strange movie. The villain's like a third side character. I'd feel like he's not really a threat at all. Dormammu was more of a villain than Mads Mikkelsen was. But dude, like I said, this is a Stephen Strange film. This is the origin film. Man, I really love seeing what they could do with magic in this universe. I think it was damn about time that we got Benedict Cumbersnatch in the MCU. I think he plays a perfect Doctor Strange. He plays that arrogant and smart, really, and wise really well in this film that proceeds to go on in Infinity War and so forth. But man, I just have a lot of fun with this film. I like it's just all the visuals they use between walking on the walls, kind of disorienting and distorting where people are, and that whole third act of them reversing the damage they did or running into a multi-dimensional New York City where everything looks like a bunch of mirrors caving in. Like, bro, that's just so fun and trippy that it's awesome. And I like is it the Grandmaster? Right? The Grandmaster in the film? Played by Tilda Swinton, or
No, it's the oh my goodness.
Man, I'm forgetting. It's like the chosen one. Oh my god,
Yeah,
I can't.
this is bad.
Okay, Tilda Swinton's character, the ancient one, ancient one. There we go. I know they gender swapped the ancient one in this film, but I really liked it. I thought Tilda Swinton did a great job as Stephen Strange's mentor. It was a shame that she died at the end because I actually wanted her to keep going on, but obviously, Stephen Strange is the master supreme magician. So my boy just needs to be in the B list. I don't think he's just A yet. I think Multiverse of Madness definitely has the potential of being A or even S tier. But Deebs, what are your opinions on Doctor Strange?
I fully agree. In terms of soundtrack, this was Michael Giacchino's best MCU soundtrack, in my opinion. I absolutely loved it. The first opening moments felt like you're watching Inception, which I absolutely love. The Ancient One was terrific. I love this movie. I love how they, like kind of Thor in Thor Ragnarok, they stripped him down. In similar light, you have Benedict Cumberbatch, who, was this arrogant a-hole, no one liked. Absolutely no one liked. And then you just stripped him apart of everything he was good at. And to have him rise and overcome that, I really enjoyed the story here. I'm good with it on a B, and I'm going to follow suit with another B ranking, and that is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which I think, like Captain America, the first Avenger, really aged well. This is, I think, a little underrated, to be honest. Yondu, I think absolutely carried this movie. I love the dynamic there between him and Rocket, questioning who they are as fathers, who they are as people, or rabbits or squirrels, whatever you want to whatever Thor calls it. So I'm going to go a B tier here for Guardians of the Galaxy 2. The soundtrack wasn't as good. The villain wasn't as good. Like the movie overall isn't as good as Guardians of the Galaxy. But like I said, that Yondu Star-Lord father-son dynamic was really effective here for me. I was sobbing like a baby. And this is one of those movies that every time I watch it, I see something else, and it gets better and better and better. So I'm going to go Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, a B ranking. What about you?
Man, this really hurts looking at where I put Guardians of the Galaxy, because Guardians of the Galaxy is one of the best MCU films of all time, but Guardians 2, I would say, is at a D.
Wow.
Yeah, I had the opposite of you. As over time, it just, one, I don't think the pacing is that good. I find myself just losing interest at least a third of the way through. I just lose track of what's going on. I think the big reason of that is because they split the film into two separate storylines for a good portion of the movie. We go with Rocket, Groot, and Yondu for one half of that story, and then the other half is the other characters on Ego. So I think going back and forth, it just jarred my interest because I feel like the group has worked better when they're all together rather than apart. And I felt like because they kept them apart for the entire movie up until that third act, it kind of damaged it for me because I do really like the third act because they're all there together. They're all riffing off each other, but they're all working kind of coordinately to put the bomb and defuse it and blow fucking Ego up or whatever. But yeah, like you said, I don't think Ego was that good of a villain. I think they treated it more as, ha, we got you. I bet you guys didn't see that coming more so than they did with like Mysterio. If anyone like really even knew Ego or heard Ego, they know he is a villain. And I don't know. I guess it's hard to say that's a complaint when I said it was something that worked for Mysterio, but I feel like, I don't know, it's just something about this film where it was cool seeing Kurt Russell in the role, but he didn't really do anything. It was a lot of exposition and dialogue and showing people about what he did. Like there's literally an instance where they go into a giant hall and he shows him every part of his life. Like they just show us in little increments on a fucking 3D model. And I'm just like, oh my God, bro, that's what we're doing. And I feel like that's why I didn't really like the Peter Quill half of the story, is because a lot of it was exposition while the Rocket and Yondu stuff was more action of them doing things, going somewhere. Meanwhile, they were just on Ego the entire time. I definitely think it's a little boring too.
Okay, that's fair. I really enjoyed it. I thought it had a lot of heart. It had a lot of warmth. I actually love the dialogue and banter in this film. We have Manda joining, says, damn right, Winter Soldier is number one.
It's not number one. It's just the one we chose first. Sorry, sweetheart.
Iron Man 3 is out. We have not gotten to Iron Man 3 yet, I think for a reason. We started at S and we're working our way. I think we're at B now.
Yeah, we're at B.
We're at B. Ryan is right, and he should say it. All right.
Yeah.
Are you up or am I up? I don't know. You are up.
Oh, I'm up. Yeah, because you chose Guardians. So we're on B, right?
Yep.
Oh man.
Look how top heavy the MC.
I think I'm good with B. I think I'm ready to go on to C. Unless you have something in B.
I'm gonna put it up there, and because I love this movie a lot, and I also think it's underrated, I'm gonna go Ant-Man and the Wasp here. Very similar respect as Ant-Man, the Michael Pena in the first one, Michael Pena in the second one. Like, there's so many lovable characters in these Ant-Man movies. I know they're not like these grand superhero films. They're heist films, but I know the villain is pretty forgettable. But my gosh, like I said about Ant-Man, like there's something so charming and lovable and heartwarming about these movies. Ant-Man and the Wasp. What about you? B.
You're gonna hate me, bro. I think it's a D. I think it's a D.
No!
I think it's a D. Honestly, I have two massive complaints about this film. My first massive one is the way they marketed it and the way that it seemed like Janet was going to be much more of a presence in the film. I really wanted to see Janet in this film more so. I know that she was stuck in the quantum realm, but I feel like they could have done more of her talking to them rather than using Scott as that conduit for contact. That was one of my main things. And another thing is I think this film is just too packed together. I think there's too many things that they're trying to do in this film that I kind of lose focus on what we're really supposed to keep track of, because we're told in the beginning of the film, after Civil War, Scott took a plea for home arrest for 2 years. And this film takes place within the last 2 days of those. So while the entire film, he's trying to stay off the radar, which I don't believe for a second that they wouldn't have caught him, because there's no way in 2018 that he was not getting caught in public like that in the Ant-Man suit, on top of Sonny Birch, which just seemed like a shoehorned third party to just kind of intersect and make things harder for them. When honestly, I felt like Ghost was a perfectly good person to go up against throughout the entire film. I don't feel like Sonny Birch really needs to be that third villain, I guess you can say, or third antagonist along with the FBI and Ghost. But at the end of the day, there really isn't a bad guy, only really Sonny Birch, I guess you can say, because Ghost character is just trying to do things to save herself. When we look at it, I guess they're trying to ask us, would we do it in that case? But the film is just so disjointed. I just had a hard time connecting to any of the plot lines. Like, I never felt rushed that Scott was going to get caught the entire movie, even though it kind of seemed like the entire second half kind of put that in the background. Like, oh yeah, guys, forget about him needing to go back home. Like, they put it in there last second, like towards the third act, just to have us remember, oh yeah, he's still in house arrest, guys. But yeah, that's how I feel towards the movie. It just has, because of those three different plot lines coming together, I feel like the pacing is really off.
Dude, an ant playing drums should make this an automatic B. Come on.
I know.
Come on.
I know. I'm sorry. It had to be done.
All right. Let's move on to C.
Okay.
Wait, were we?
Yeah, we're on C. I had no more B's. I had no more B's for myself. Man, oh man. I'm gonna put Avengers Age of Ultron in C.
Okay.
I'm not the biggest fan of this. This is, where is it on my list? It's 17 out of all 23 on my list. I don't think this is as good as the first, second, third ones. I definitely think this is the worst one of them all, if you'd want to say. I definitely think Joss Whedon tried to do something different with trying to change the tone. I don't think it worked for this movie's benefit. It just didn't seem right. I don't know why. I was excited for it, but I just don't think the darker tone worked for these characters, especially in the films that set them up. They were much brighter. Even Captain America Winter Soldier was a little bit brighter than this film. Ultron, I like James Spader. He did a great voice. I love what he did. But overall, Ultron just didn't feel threatening. I didn't feel for a second that they wouldn't defeat him. I like the stakes that they put at the end where the Sokovia was being lifted up, and that is what would cause like a nuclear type event or like a disastrous type event. I did like that. And the third act was cool just from like a standing point of view, or not standing, but from a fighting point of view. Quicksilver, they just completely, I don't really think I have to speak on that because I think everyone's disappointed with what they did with Quicksilver in this film. I didn't really like Scarlet Witch in this film. She just seemed like a really emo goth girl that I don't think worked, but seeing where she is now, I like her much more. The Hulk Banner and Natasha love story just seems so out of left field. Like, what the fuck were they doing? There was no build up. Next thing you know, they're about to have like steamy sex with each other all of a sudden. The one good thing I'll give this film is I like how they built on Clint's backstory and his family. So I give that film some credit. But what about you, Deebs?
Yeah, I'm good with that as C. You know, it's not perfect, but you know, you could tell that Joss Whedon wanted this movie to be bigger and better and just in scope and ideas like of the Avengers. But I think what he lost was like that quippy, campy nature of the original Avengers. And what's sad about it was like the first like 5-10 minutes of it are like absolutely terrific. We're at the party and they're trying to lift the hammer and like I love that banter between is it Thor and who has the better girlfriend? Remember that? Like, it's so good. Like that's literally like some of my favorite parts of the MCU is when you're getting that banter and that dialogue back and forth. It's terrific. So I'm good with that as C. I think you nailed it. It had a lot of good ideas. Like I love Ultron, but let's be honest, the comic book version is so much better. And I thought they kind of did him dirty a little bit. He could have been a lot better. I think this movie had way more potential. But I'm good with it as C. I'm good with that.
Yeah. Do you have any more C's?
I think I have one. I think I have one. How about you?
I have one as well too.
I'm gonna go Thor.
Okay, that was the one I was gonna choose, bro. That was the one I was gonna choose.
I like Thor, and I think kind of like it aged as really well. I think the film score is really, really good. Kenneth Branagh, I think, directed this one.
Yeah.
I just think you look at like Thor, like when I like look at these movies, like of course I look at Thor Ragnarok and where we've come from the first Thor. So that has an impact on my ranking at least. So I like Thor. I know the last villain. I don't. What was the name of that guy with
I
the
think it
that
was
shot?
the Destroyer or
The Destroyer.
something.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But this really, started us with that dynamic between Thor and Loki, which I think is one of the best dynamics in the MCU period. So I'll go C here for Thor. What about you?
No, yeah, there's not really much to talk about this film. The only thing is it's a very phase one film, and I feel like you can say that about a bunch of the phase one films where they were kind of trying to find their footing and stride on where they wanted the character to go. I do like the aspect of the fish out of water of him being sent to New Mexico and all that, like with him going to the diner for the first time, finishing his coffee, asking for another and breaking it on the ground because that's how they do it back in Asgard. Like, bro, why are you breaking a fucking coffee cup? We're gonna use that. Like, I really like, yeah, like I like a bunch of that little stuff, but overall, it just feels like a fine movie. Like I could go back, watch it, and enjoy it. You know what I mean? There's not too much I dislike. The Destroyer is just kind of boring, but at the end of the day, he is that secondary villain that Loki sent, and to see where all these characters have been going later, I really do like it. And now that we're getting Natalie Portman back, I think it's going to be interesting to see like what they bring back from this first film.
Awesome. What about D?
Man, you know what? I'm gonna put the Incredible Hulk in D. I was debating if I should put it in C, but overall, this is my 20th out of my. Oh wait, no, my 18th out of my 23 rankings. I like this film. I shouldn't say I love it. I shouldn't say it's awful because I feel like this movie gets too much hate because it's the black sheep of the MCU. It's the black sheep of the MCU film. Just because the Bruce Banner is played by Edward Norton in this film, and now it's played by Mark Ruffalo. Two different actors, two different designs. The only things that are connecting them, well, now from what we have, not talking about the She-Hulk show, is Thunderbolt Ross. He's the only connection we had, and Tony Stark because he made a cameo at the end of this film. But overall, I think this movie has really good CGI. I think the Hulk and the Abomination look really good in this film, especially for 2008 standards. I really like the New York City fight at the end between him and the Abomination, and everything in between is cool. I enjoy it. This is their first Hulk film and their only Hulk solo film I think they'll ever get. So I think it deserves a D spot.
I'm okay with it at a D. I mean, it's forgettable.
Yeah.
To be fair, the fact that Ross is still in the MCU is really crazy in itself, and the fact that we could get Abomination in the MCU in the
He's
future,
confirmed.
Is that confirmed?
Show. Yeah, he's Abomination in the She-Hulk show, and the chick who played Betty in the movie is in it too.
Okay.
So, like I said, they're finally starting to connect these characters, which is what I hope brings a little bit more attention to this film, because I definitely think it's the black sheep, and it's a film that's just there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm gonna go. Fine, I'm gonna go Captain Marvel. Just put it at a D, even though I don't like it. I'm not a big fan of Captain Marvel. It's not a terrible movie per se. I just think the expectations and the hype were just unwarranted. Like, I remember when this movie was coming out, Kevin Feige was coming out and boom, this is going to be the strongest Avenger. We're going to see it on the big screen. And it was so anticlimactic. I thought even the 90s references, as a 90s guy, like I'm 90s through the core, and like the references even weren't good enough. Yeah, you had Blockbuster. Yeah, you had like one really good song moment where it's just kicking ass. I think it was No Doubt, I'm Just a Girl. But like I wanted more, and I think that really sums up Captain Marvel. I wanted more. I'm excited for what the Marvels will look like, because that's finally going to give you emotion and give you some better character development. And character dynamics with other characters like Photon and Kamala Khan. I think that's going to be really exciting. I think that if there's one thing that WandaVision crushed is actually making me more excited for Captain Marvel 2. Because that was like, if we had to make an anticipation list, that was on the bottom of the totem pole for me, at least. The fact that WandaVision did that is a true remarkable feat for me. But Captain Marvel D, what about you?
Yeah, I'll say this straight up. I don't think any Marvel films an F. I won't put any Marvel film at an F, but I will put Captain Marvel at an E because this film is not very strong. I don't want to say good. I'm gonna say it's not very strong. I think this movie doesn't have a lot going for it. The color is just disgusting throughout the entire film. I feel like they shot everything and they're like, oh, everything's too bright. Let's just make everything gray. And they desaturated every single color out of this movie. I will admit, I do like Captain Marvel's suit in this movie. It's just because it stands out of all things. I think Captain Marvel is just boring in this movie. There's nothing to her. I don't want to blame Brie Larson because I know she's a good actor. I think it comes down to the two directors, which I think made a problem for this movie, and the writing. I think they just wrote her as this super straight-faced, boring woman who they say is because she's in the military and stuff like that, but it's not a very good reasoning. There's no really other reason for her to be a hard ass, I guess you can say, but she maybe smirks once or twice throughout the whole film. I'm not trying to be one of those people that like, oh, I don't like it because she didn't smile, but like she just showed no character traits throughout this film, and she just felt like I was watching one of the Among Us characters, just one colored character doing nothing throughout the entire film. I will say she played a lot better off Sam Jackson. So when they were kind of skedaddling, I enjoyed it. Ben Mendelsohn was great in this.
He was good. He was good.
Other than that, though, I thought this movie was pretty forgettable and colorless and bland.
Yep, I agree. I can't. And then the last three here, man, I
All
don't even
for me.
About.
All
these are some of movies that I would rather just pretend are not in the MCU. They're not. Iron Man 3, Iron Man 2, and then Thor: The Dark World. For me, I would probably either put these in E or F. Like, they're so forgettable, at least for me. Like Iron Man 3, Iron Man 2, they have really good soundtracks. Other than that, I mean, Iron Man 2, you had Black Widow, and the best thing that came out of that was, my God, she was attractive in that. Talk about anticlimactic final fight in Iron Man 2. Iron Man 3 was just meh. Thor: The Dark World, I mean, you had some interesting dynamics there between Loki and Thor, but these are just three really just low tier movies. I think we all agree on that. So
no, yeah, I honestly agree. I think the thing that saves the two Iron Man movies from being enough for me is Robert Downey Jr. Honestly, I think he absolutely kills it in this role. I really like his relationship with Rhodey. They build off that. Gwyneth Paltrow is Gwyneth Paltrow. But honestly, like you said, there's nothing to these films. I definitely think they had the right ideas. I don't think they fleshed them out correctly enough. Without that said, at least Iron Man 2, I want to see Justin Hammer return. I definitely think he was an interesting enough villain to keep my interest in there. I think F is I don't find anything good about it, but at least in Iron Man and Iron Man 2, I can find something worthwhile between Robert Downey Jr. in both films, his relationship with Rhodey and Rhodey's development between Iron Patriot, and in the second one with Justin Hammer, I think he's just a fun, vivacious character enough to keep my interest a little bit there. But other than those, I think these films are an absolute train wreck. And I think now that they announced Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, it brings my Iron Man 3 down a little bit more simply because of that Mandarin mishap.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to see, like, I really hope they make fun of it in the Shang-Chi movie. Because I definitely think they will. It's a good opportunity. But I definitely think both Iron Mans should be an E. But if you want Thor, you can decide E or F for me. I really just don't like that film.
All right, we're going E's for Iron Man and we'll put Thor at F.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit about like Iron Man 2 with the like I am someone that like I love, creative freedom. Like I love going into a movie and being totally surprised on a new take or a fresh idea on a character. But what they did with Mandarin there, like I remember going into the dark with that movie and not knowing a thing. And what they did with Mandarin, like I was so blown away by that decision there. I was not a fan. Like that usually like 9 out of 10 times I'm good with these kind of things and new ideas.
It was so out of nowhere.
It was crazy, but it didn't. The payoff wasn't good enough. And we have Taro here saying this is too hard. I can't do it. It's like picking your favorite child. It 100% is. We have Elevators Not Worthy. That's a great. I love that, dude. Saying, hey guys, what's going on? Thanks for joining. Thanks for watching. All right, so there is our ranking. Just final thoughts, man, on our picks here.
Honestly, I think we fucking nailed it in the S tier. To be fair, really, I think all these films did pretty groundbreaking things for the MCU. Spider-Man Far From Home aside, I think Captain America Winter Soldier, groundbreaking. Infinity War, groundbreaking. Guardians, groundbreaking. Thor Ragnarok, not groundbreaking for the MCU, but groundbreaking for a character that really had no life to him for most of his run in the MCU. And Avengers End Game is such a monumental feat in cinematic history that it obviously just deserves to be up here. I think I agree with everything from B up. I think C down is when me and you really started to like mix things up because I know I had things at D a little bit more than you did. But yeah, I definitely agree with where our rankings are. And those E and F ranges are just like, I want to do an entire MCU rewatch, but man, I'm just dreading those films.
My quick take on this, and I got to go back a little bit because we also did a DC EU version of our rankings here. And the big take when we were, done, go check that out on our channel, by the way, was like, holy crap. You look at all these like top S tier, A tier DC EU films, not like only other than Wonder Woman, they were missing Superman, they were missing Batman, they were missing like the Trinity, and all the other characters in the DCU were represented. Here, when I look at this, is like only really one miss in recent memory for the MCU, and that is Captain Marvel. Like you look at how successful the Kevin Feige and the MCU has been. One miss in terms of like huge properties over the last 4 or 5 years. So that is crazy. That is just an absolutely crazy feat. The fact that I really like you talk about it like. Kevin Feige, his vision, his storyboarding, his vision down the road, and him giving creative freedom to the directors and letting them do what they do. And it deserves so much praise. It deserves so much praise, especially with, I think the strength of phase 3 here was they truly understood the character developments and nailed it there with Endgame. And what you see with Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision, that is running character development through and through. Like that's like the main takeaway is they are really rooting new characters into the MCU, and that has to get you really excited as a Marvel fan.
Yeah, I can't tell you how disappointed I was coming out of Captain Marvel. I didn't have high anticipation like a lot of people did, but it's Brie Larson in a superhero role. And I think that's really all that needed to speak enough. And you know what the unfortunate part is? I'll never know where this movie went wrong. If it was Brie Larson by herself, not being able to like hold a role by herself in the film, or if it was the directors or writing, because now with the sequel, she's going to be interacting with Photon and Miss Marvel. So we'll never get to see another solo Captain Marvel run to see and compare the differences. Yeah. And I think that's kind of what bums me out. Like, I'm really excited for the Marvels because I really want to give Captain Marvel another shot, but I really want to see what Captain Marvel could have done in another solo film, because if this happened to Thor, we would have never gotten Thor Ragnarok, man. Because those first 2 Thor films, the first one was received well enough, but then the second one, dude, look where we place it. No one really wants to rewatch that film. And if what happened to Captain Marvel happened to Thor, it's just crazy to think. You know what I mean?
100%, man. I think we did a really good job. I think we did a really good job here. I like that, Iron Man gets a spot. I like that first Avenger gets a spot. 10 years from now, I wonder what this is going to look like,
Dude, not even 10 years from now, 3 years from now, looking at what they have it up until 2024. Like, bro, we are already almost halfway through the year and we're still getting 4 Marvel films. Like, what?
Crazy.
No, actually 5 if you want to count Venom. Like, what the fuck, dude? That's insane. We're getting Black Widow in July, Shang-Chi in September, Venom in October, Eternals in November. Like, bro, every month we're getting a new Marvel project starting in September. Actually, fuck it, even starting in June. June we have Loki. July we have Black Widow, and then August is probably going to be Hawkeye, What If, or Miss Marvel. Like, and in between the other Marvel shows, like it blows my fucking mind where we are now with the MCU grading all of these. And man, I'll even agree, even though we have movies in D and up, I still find absolutely enjoyable. I can find something in them that I do truly appreciate. Those E's and F's are a mixed bag, but I can't say I absolutely hate them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have like any final thoughts before we start wrapping it up and telling the schedule?
No, I think we nailed it. Look how top heavy that is. I mean, that is crazy.
That's what I said.
Crazy.
If we have a good significant amount of the MCU in S, A, or B, I think the MCU has achieved greatness.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, guys, thank you for coming out, hanging out with us, watching us rank the MCU. And guys, if you are not subscribed to our new channel, don't forget to smack that like button and turn on our post notifications on Twitter. And man, do we have a lot of content planned for you guys. Later today at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, me, Deebs, and Gabe from Cinespection are doing our Versus series today. That was supposed to happen last week, but it's happening this week. Don't you guys worry. We want to save it for a little bit of surprise on what we're doing it. But then Saturday, guys, tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern, we are bringing back our drafts with the best movie villains or villains of all time. It's gonna be a blast. And then starting next week on Thursdays, we will have our roundtable talks where it's just going to be a rotating specter of us. And we just talk about news during the week in the movie sphere, TV sphere. Join us for that. Fridays, we've got our Versus series. Tuesdays, we got Deebs, Loretto, and AJ doing the Bad Batch reviews. Wednesdays or Fridays, depending on when the Marvel shows comes out, we are going to do a review for those. And we'll do these other streams in between doing rankings, our quick reviews. And dude, it's absolutely insane. If you guys want to stay tuned for that, like I said before, smack the like button, follow us on Twitter, follow each of us individually on Twitter so you're always up to date on what's happening over on the Suit Up channel. So I'll see you guys, and we'll see you guys later tonight